welcome to Life, Love and the Pursuit of Real Estate. This is one of my sessions with John where we do, he basically interviews me and asks me some questions. These are unrehearsed. I'm not sure what questions, as always, that he's going to ask me. So, and I might have a little bit of banter on the answers to those questions and also other issues that might be on the circumference of those answers. So, John, welcome. Thanks for all the great work you do on our channel.
Pleasure.
Right?
Really enjoy it.
And thank you for keeping me in touch in the social media sphere.
It's great. You deserve to be there. It's just great. It's a real pleasure to be working on the channel.
Good.
Yeah, and we're doing so well. We're getting lots of numbers on the videos and people are responding to our posts, which is always fantastic.
Yeah, it's been really good. It's a blessing.
So I've got a few questions for you today.
Let's go. Fire away.
I've been looking through our Instagram postings lately, and as you know, we're constantly putting out content there and doing little one-liners that you're well known for. And one of the ones that you came up with recently was feeling unworthy is what halts us in life. So I wanted you to give us a little bit more insight as to where that sentiment comes from and how people can perhaps start thinking about themselves in a way that they deserve to help them achieve greater success.
That's quite a wide berth question. So what I'll do is I'll tell you my experiences, what led me to write that quote. Yeah. That's the first thing. Over the period of time, I've dealt with some very successful real estate people. I've dealt with some very successful sports people. And what I've found, and I've dealt with people that have been in the volunteer sphere. There's another guy that I met the other day who's very impressive, Jordan Hill, who runs the Kenya One Foundation, right? And it's interesting because most of those people have a humility to them. But what actually happens is humility and unworthiness can be very closely aligned. Yes. Right? So and there are things that I haven't attacked in my life because I didn't think I could do them, and that's a form of unworthiness. And there's things that I've done, and I've always tried to be quite humble, that I've done reasonably well at. And then you worry about how the media sets the benchmark on who's up there and who's not, those sorts of things. So the other quote that I had that came out well before that, remember, is I am worthy. Yes. And I actually, I wrote that quote in particular to a friend of mine who was, or who is a sportsman at a fairly high level. So what I found was he was suffering the fact that he didn't think he would go to the next level, even though he'd done all the training and it had been really good and received many accolades and trophies, etc., and awards and money. But he had a sense of unworthiness. So that's why the video before this one, I did that short-term goals thing. Yes. Because what I've learned is if you want to change that behaviour or that mentality, then small steps are more important. And that's why people can't do goals. So I found that people that feel a bit unworthy generally look at themselves either far too hard or they haven't done enough small goals to make themselves worthy. So therefore, every time they've had a long-term goal, they haven't achieved it, so they believe they're unworthy. Yes. Now that's one of the things that I've found over tutoring quite a few people. The other thing with that is that there is a sense of, I won't say arrogance, but a sense of surety that make people think that they're worthy. Right? People that think that they're worthy without deserving, without having achieved enough to deserve that worth, do you mean? No, people that have done the deal. Yes. But a lot of them, what's happening is that you can't manage what you can't test and measure. Yes. So what I've found is, and look, everyone is different. Some people that think they're worthy may not be. Some people that think they're unworthy might not be. There's all that. So what I say to people is if you want to be hard on yourself and you want to tackle this, but you think that objective is far too hard for you, which is making you feel inadequate or unworthy, right, then lessen the task. Yes. Give you, like the weight loss thing. Yes. Why worry about losing 10 kilos if that's monumental? Let's worry about losing 1 or 1.5 kilos. let's see how we go with that.
To help build confidence that you're actually achieving something along the way, rather than waiting
that's
too
right.
long.
Small
before you see
steps.
results.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
from little things, big things grow, as
Yes.
Paul Kelly said.
Yeah.
Right. So on that
Yeah.
is what I've found is when I've been at my weakest
Yes.
is actually when the guy upstairs is testing me at my best.
Yes, and you often refer to the guy upstairs, which
Yeah.
I want to bring up later on in the interview.
Okay.
And how that plays a part in your life.
Yeah.
But also, how does the fact that you were adopted impact on this statement about worthiness? Because obviously, you've spoken about the positive aspects of your adoption and how you had great parenting, and you've actually turned it and never saw it as a negative thing. But does that somehow tie in with a sense of worthiness, where we come from in the past and our parenting, a sense of belonging from the early stages in life? Do we have to focus on that and have a certain awareness of where that unworthiness is coming from early stages through to what's happening right now?
I was adopted at about 10 weeks old, I think, by memory.
Yes.
Right? So I've always just known my parents.
Yes.
Okay. But I will tell you that I was born in 1962, and I can tell you for probably the first 15, 16, 17 years of my life in this part of Melbourne, it wasn't trendy or cool to be Italian.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it certainly wasn't trendy or cool to be adopted.
Mm.
So I had like a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
which was really difficult. And although I don't talk about it a lot, I can tell you that there were times where you just felt less.
Yes.
Because 98% of the population were Anglo-Saxon, 2% were European. I was living in a fruit shop.
Yes.
My dad was, selling some fruit and veg that were really European or Italian based, and a lot of the Aussies weren't buying it. And then, so therefore, the first few years of our business, we struggled.
Yeah.
So, and I can remember when I was about my mid-teens, then my parents started to become a bit more affluent.
Yes.
Right, and my father was bringing Queensland fruit down from Queensland into Victoria, like custard apples and pawpaw and passion fruit and pineapple, and the Aussies were just starting to get into that mode of buying that type of produce.
Yes.
But also too, within an Italian family, adoption wasn't cool because it just wasn't recognised.
Yeah.
So you were considered a second-class citizen. And even with some of my family members, like my aunties and uncles, some of them weren't all that conducive to my sister and I, or congenial, I should say, for want of a better word, nor were they very nice to us behind our back, and all those sorts of things. And my mother, being the very smart woman that she is as people have passed on, my mum's told me stories, but she never told them to me while they were alive, right? So, and it was interesting how that's eventuated. So I often think about that, and I think to a certain extent that made me. But what actually happened is that, and I suppose this has a little bit to do with my sister, but as we were growing up, if I felt that some of that negative disposition about the adoption was going to affect my sister, I went into very much protective mode.
Yes.
Now, my sister's adopted too. So we're not blood related, but we're brother and sister, right? So from that point of view, that thought process is probably never altered till today. Now, on that score, it actually drove me to another level, and I had to keep saying to myself that I was worthy.
Yes.
And I had to say to myself that I could play football as good as the Aussie kid could play.
Yes.
I had to say to myself that I could hit a cricket ball as good as the Aussie kid could. So from those points of view, and that's what I call trigger points, there's always been trigger points in my life that have determined where I am now.
Yes.
So, and it can be some of the ways that maybe some relatives spoke to me and the inflection in their voices. It can be that maybe some of the gifts my cousins got were better than the ones I got, my sister and I received. There was those sorts of things that happened along the way. So, to a certain extent, my father being a very humble and passive man, my mum's a bit more forthright, but my mum was always the one that used to put me on the pedestal.
Yes.
And say, you're easy,
Yes.
good enough to do that.
Yes.
So I had a very good balancing act. I had a bit of humility with a little bit of surety.
Yeah.
So I suppose the balance of the parents has been good. But one of the things that I learnt really early from my nunno, from my grandfather, he used to say to me in his broken English, if you want to be successful, listen. If you want to make more money, listen. And if you want a better outcome for your life, listen. But only listen to those that are doing better than you.
Yes.
And then implement.
Yes.
And he used to say it in this broken format with, some Italian words and Australian words, but I can remember in the market garden when I'd go back there after school, that's the stuff he'd say to me, and some of that stuff just resonated with me all the time. So, you've got, use them in that order.
Yeah.
So how any unworthiness that I feel, and we all have those low times, right? It's how quickly you come out of those low times. So I always say that I haven't gone through the fact that I went through the adoption into a new family and had the opportunity of a great family, not to use it. So therefore, someone deems me worthy.
Yes.
Obviously for me, the guy upstairs.
Yes.
So that's what keeps me motivated.
Yeah. And it's working very well for you, just having that awareness, self-reflection, to understand where that notion of self-worthiness can come from and how to think about it differently and how to turn it into...
Yes, but I'm respectful of the lineage that I've had.
Yes.
So therefore, and my grandfather and my father have always said this, they say, your job, Michael, is to make sure that you are better than the sum of where you've come from. Yes. And that your kids are the same in the next generation. Yes. And that doesn't mean that we want to be billionaires,
yes,
even though we're comfortable. It means we want to be good people, do the right thing, earn a great income, do the right thing with the income, and make sure that we educate the next generation to be even better than we were.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
Yes, and that leads to the next quote that we came up with recently on Instagram about if you had everything when you were growing up, you wouldn't have what you have today. So obviously you've achieved quite a high degree of financial success, career success and status. And without having, if you were given that from the get-go, you probably wouldn't be able to appreciate it as much and be driven to get where you got to today.
There's two lines of thoughts on that. When I wrote that quote,
yes,
I noticed that you put that up straight away.
Yeah.
So you obviously liked it.
I resonated with that.
Yeah, you did, right? Now, so one line of thought is that if you give your kids everything,
yes,
and you don't make them work as hard as you do or harder, that they're not going to have the respect for the money.
Yeah.
With some people, that's true. But it's like, what I find, children are no different to adults, just in bigger skin, in lesser skin, right?
Yes.
So therefore, what I might do for my oldest son, Christian, is not what I necessarily do for Jacob.
Yes.
So, and sometimes I'll have banter between them that I favour one against the other and all that sort of stuff. But what I've done is I've decided to apply different strategies because they're both different individuals.
People. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And they're motivated differently.
Yes.
Right? But their baseline always is loyalty to the family.
Yes.
That's their baseline, which is great, which I've tried to accept. So the answer to that question is, I believe that every generation becomes more affluent. Every generation becomes more affluent, generally with less effort. Because the kids are smart now, really well educated. Like my youngest has just got into Melbourne Uni, which is a great accolade.
Yes.
All that sort of stuff. I never ever thought any of our family would ever get in there, not being funny.
Yeah.
So therefore that was monumental. And some of the things, my oldest son's got 2 businesses running and he works with me. Like, not being funny, I'm proud. But the reality of that is that I approach it differently. But what I have learnt is this, is your responsibility as a parent is to teach them that if they are bequeathed wealth, what to do with it. Because what I find, it's easy to say, I want Johnny to work as hard as I did. And I want him, I'm going to make him pay for his own car and all those sorts of things. I get that, and for some kids that works, and for some it doesn't, in my opinion. But what my biggest responsibility is to make sure that I teach them what to do with the acquisition of wealth, because we always worry about them getting it. But what do we worry? We should be worrying about what happens when they bequeathed it, what they do with it. And sometimes I think we've got that arse about. So the answer to the question's twofold. Some, with me, that was good because it drove me more. So therefore, every time I bought a new car or a new asset, I knew exactly what I had to do to get it. I think the generation now is a little bit different because they're smarter.
And you were speaking about that in the earlier video that we produced, where the mentality now, and it's being spread on social media by a lot of mentors, about working smarter, not harder, working less to make more.
Yes.
So all these ideas that are circulating at the moment are quite often less about putting in the hard work and the determination that perhaps, you know, previous generations might have had. Now it's more about how clever they can be in utilising all these online technologies to leverage, you know, that technology to make more wealth in a much easier way. So it's a different way of thinking, but you have to have perspective about that and understand that nothing comes without a certain degree of work and commitment.
That's right. You know, I think one of the things Gary Vee says, you want to make more money, work fucking harder, he says. And
he's one of the few that insists on the hard work.
Yes, he does.
The main principle.
And to a certain extent, I don't disagree with that. I think, I mentioned before about Dr. Fred, my personal development coach. When I met Fred nearly 25 years ago, I can remember sitting at a real estate conference, and I was running a really good real estate office then. We were turning over good numbers, good profit. I had a fair amount of staff. And Fred gets up there and pontificates and says, work less, earn more.
Yeah.
And I went, yeah, okay. Like I was a disbeliever. And then he started going on, and I'm starting to listen to him, and I think, this guy was being quite esoteric. Right. So he was really talking about really influences of the Bible, and he's a rabbi, right? But influences of their doctrine in the business world.
Yes.
So he sort of got me. So what I did is, I've been there 24 years now, but I was really like the black sheep for the first 5 to 10 years. Because I wasn't necessarily a believer, but I wasn't a disbeliever.
Yeah.
I was inquisitive on the thought process. So...
And you seem to bring the sense of a higher power into a lot of your content today.
Well,
so
yeah, and I think, Fred has a lot to do with that. But when Fred said, earn more, work less, I didn't necessarily believe it. But what the content of that is work smarter, still work hard, but get more bang for your buck. So basically earn more money out of that.
Yeah.
And that's how in the end I looked at it, because I never ever went through real estate working a lot less. But what I did is I did more with my time though, to make myself more money than I thought I could make. So therefore, when I used to get a commission check, I'd open it up and my mouth would drop because I didn't realise what I'd earned for the month, because it was something that I never checked.
Yes.
And then I realised, when someone asked me a question once, they said to me, Michael, how did you write all those numbers last year? And I felt like an idiot. And when I answered, I don't know really, that's when I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll do some training and I'll find out what I did do. Yes. So I started learning what I did well and repeated
training.
it. So I started repeating the process.
Yes.
So the reality of it is that if you want to work 10 hours a week and make $1,000 a week, you can do that in the right field.
Yes.
But imagine if you want to make $5,000 a week and you work 50 hours. Imagine what happens to your lifestyle then if you use the money right.
Yeah.
So I think that's what that adage is really all about.
Yes.
So, and I believe the Gary Vee philosophy, as far as, work harder, I tend to be of that ilk a little bit, but maybe because I'm older.
Yes.
I tend to be if I need to do something, I need to work a lot harder at it.
Yeah.
But the millennials do think differently. So I can watch my oldest son there turn over some money, whether it's in the crypto space or in the clothing space or whatever it might be, and I sit there and just laugh about how much he turned over in 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
By just watching graphs. I think there's a component of all that in each of us.
There's a saying that to be part of the 1%, you need to do what the 99% aren't prepared to do. And that's all about having the right mindset to achieve maximum success. What's your take on developing that kind of way of thinking?
I don't know whether it is 1 and 99%. I don't know what I don't know what the stat is, but I get the concept.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you some of my, right off the cuff, just some of my philosophies with that. When I'm at my best, at my very best, I'm up early. I'm in bed generally pretty early, like 10, and I'm on, right? And I find that on a really successful day, 1/3 of my day is planning. 1/3 of my day is actioning and implementing, and 1/3 of my day is review. That's a perfect day for me.
Yes.
Now, I have a lot of people say to me, I don't know how you do so many things and pump out 200 videos on YouTube and 458 posts or whatever it is on Instagram, all that other stuff, which is lovely, and all the Facebook stuff that's going on that you do. So I do that by using IP of people that I love and trust, like you.
Yes.
So therefore, if you look at the planning, the implementing and the review part of my day, which is the ideal perfect day for me, that's how I think the 1% operate.
Yes.
On that score.
So as well as planning, it's being able to delegate tasks to make sure you find the right people to help you achieve
the Warren Buffett
those goals.
philosophy.
Yes.
So therefore, you know, he always says, he goes, I'm not a Rhodes Scholar, but I don't need to be either.
Yeah.
He goes, I'll hire them, right? So, and that's what I've found. So on that score, the eventuality of that Warren Buffett philosophy, that's what I atone to. You know, social media is nothing that I'm really all that interested in, even though we've done pretty well. So when people say to me, how come you do so much in a day when I'm at my best? The reality of that is because I use the right people.
Yes. And alongside all the planning that you do. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that you're doing.
There's a third. And that's how I think my day works at its best. And just to cover that again, you know, it's planning, implementing, and then reviewing.
Yes.
So therefore, a lot of people do the first two, they don't do the last one. The review is important.
Yes.
Right? So, you know, at the end of every day, I still write a shit list. Right? I write the things that I was no good at during the day, things I failed at, and things I need to work on, and the things I need to do that I didn't do today.
So we need to be critical about what we're doing, not always...
Yeah, the review is really important. Yes, because self-assessment...
Yes.
I think everyone needs a mentor or a coach of some description.
Yes.
Right? That's why I've got one.
Yes.
Roger Federer has one. All those guys all have one, right?
Yeah.
But self-assessment, true, honest, critical self-assessment is crucial.
Yes.
When you go, I really fucked this up.
Yeah.
I didn't do this very well.
Yes.
If you can honestly say that to yourself and go, blah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the only chance you've got of addressing any problems that might be there and improving them.
Yeah.
Just being able to admit to yourself that you could have done better.
Well, it's interesting. You know, Clint Eastwood says, you know, a man's got to know his weaknesses.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Know your weaknesses and then find out how to overcome them.
Yes.
That's the
next
key.
part. Good sentiment, really. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that. That's all I had for you today, Mike.
Good on you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks for your subscriptions. Thanks for your comments. I hope this has been a bit more of an insight into me. Great. God bless. Stay great.